Good morning and welcome to the Men's Leadership Network. Thank you for joining us for our final Men's Leadership Network meeting of the semester. We're glad you could join us. Special welcome to everybody meeting across Nashville and Cool Springs at Bricks and Nolensville at Highway 55. Anybody joining us live this morning on the internet or joining us later through a podcast, good morning. Welcome to you all. We're glad you could join us. We're going to go with about a 35-minute interview with Ben Midgette this morning, and then we're going to pause and take some questions. So if you've got questions along the way for Ben and you want to get them to me, you can do that two ways. You can tweet those questions in to @leadership.net, or you can email them in at questions@mensleadershipnetwork.com. And again, the Twitter handle is @leadership_net. This morning, our speaker is Ben Midgette. Ben Midgette is the Engineered Wood Products Sales Manager for LP Building Products and has 28 years experience in the industry. In his current position, Ben is responsible for LP's EWP sales for all of North America. During his time with LP, he's held several positions, including General Manager in the United Kingdom and District Sales Manager in the Pacific Northwest. Also, he's held marketing, manufacturing, and technical roles. Ben has a BS in Wood Science from the University of Illinois and has completed the Mailer Leadership Program. While his professional resume is impressive, that's not why Ben is joining us this morning. Perhaps there's some carryover from leading at work that has led to his impressive leadership at home. But home is where we're going to focus today. Ben has a unique strategy for creating milestone moments in the life of his kids, and that's something we hope to learn more about today. Ben and his wife Charlotte and their 3 children have been attending Rolling Hills Community Church since 2005, and he's served as small group leader in the students ministry, as well as on the finance team, and he's currently the chairman of the board at Rolling Hills Community Church. Please join me this morning in welcoming Ben Midgette.
Ben. Thank you. Hey, Ben, thanks so much for being with us today. This is exciting. Tell us a little bit more about your family and kind of your career.
Yeah, so as Thomas said, I'm married to an amazing woman, Charlotte Keeney. She's very involved here at Rolling Hills. We've been married for 20 years. And we, actually 23 years, but we have 3 amazing children. Cameron, who's a sophomore at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Mackenzie, who is a junior in high school, and Callum, who's in the 8th grade. So, you know, we're just in one of those periods of life that's completely busy and chaotic and exciting and and challenging. And so with LP, you know, I've been with them for 28 years. You know, it's just been, I've been so blessed to have so many different roles and the opportunity to do so many different things. And, you know, it's just been a great career.
I know, I mean, I love it. Just getting to know you and some of your journey and being in England and, you know, working over there and the relationships you built there and the difference you made there and then coming back here and now being over kind of North America. I mean, you've got a big job, so that's exciting. So tell us a little bit about your faith journey in Christ.
Yeah, so, you know, Jeff, I was literally raised in the church. My father's a pastor. I accepted Christ at a very young age. And then in my early teens and or late teens and early adult, I was really attracted to the crowds that were taking the most risks and partying, and my walk really went away from God. And thankfully, God protected me during that time. And you know, right around the time Charlotte and I were going to get married, you know, I just really wanted God to be the foundation of my family. And so we started going to church before we got married. And, you know, since then, you know, God's been working on me and through churches, through experiences, and through my relationships. But He's still working on me.
Yeah, we're all a work in progress, aren't we? So, hey, tell me about when you kind of came back to the Lord and committed your life to Him, and how has that impacted your family?
Yeah, you know, I was an extreme workaholic, Jeff, and I think, you know, my career was everything, and everything else was second, and then I got to the place where, you know, I'd put God in front of my career, but it was still then God career, and my family was definitely third on the list. And I was in this Bible study called CLC. It's Christian Leadership Concepts. It's kind of like a Bible study on steroids. It's a 2-year commitment. And we were in this module called Leading Your Family. And I just became very convicted in that one, that my family, my wife and my children are also children of God. And they are his children, and he's entrusted me to be a leader in their lives. And that I was doing a pretty poor job with that. And since I saw my life as a job, unfortunately, I had to put my family as a job to realize that I was not performing very well, and that someday God was going to have a conversation with me about, how did you do with my children? And it's kind of the ultimate performance review. And I didn't think I'd score very well. So I started really focusing on being more intentional, being more purposeful with time with my children, with where they were at in their faith journey, where where their interests lie, and how I could become connected with them.
Well, I tell you, I've watched you and Charlotte, which has been awesome, but I've watched your kids too, and your kids love the Lord and they serve. And so there's something God's working through you to really make an impact in your family. And you came up with several years ago this kind of idea of doing a rite of passage trip with your kids. And when they turned 16, talk about that. How did you come up with this idea? What kind of sparked that?
Well, I just, when I was in my late teens, I had so much energy. And it wasn't just I was attracted to risk. I needed risk, right? I just had this, and there wasn't really anyone around me saying, hey, here's some healthy ways that you can take risks, and that are not just partying and things like that. And so, I wanted to provide something like that for my children if they were like me. And then the other part of that is our culture doesn't really have a line or a moment in time that says, you are now a man, you are now a woman. And, I just wanted to mark a moment in time that said, you are becoming an adult, things are going to change, you are going to go into the world. You will face challenges, but you are not alone. You have God, and you have people that believe in you around you, and so that was really, the bottom line of what I was trying to do. So we do two things in our family. I take them on a trip when they're 16, and then Charlotte takes them on a mission trip in their senior year. And so for my trip, it's one-on-one, and I have a criteria that it has to be something that we work towards. So an example might be scuba diving. So you have to learn how to scuba dive first, and then you have to dive in a pool, and then we'll do some local dives, and then we'll go on a big trip. And so it wasn't really just about the trip, but it was about forcing my children to spend time with me, and preparing that. When they're younger, it's easy to get them to spend time with you, but as they get older, it gets harder and harder.
Well, I love the idea of that whole rite of passage, because really in our society, like you said, we don't have as much. The Jews have bar mitzvahs, and they kind of identify this. Other societies, you have different times that are those rites of passage. But in our society, is it 12? Is it 13 when you become a teenager? Is it 16 when you get your driver's license? Is it 18, when you go off to college? We really don't have kind of a marker. And so for you to come in and say, I'm going to help establish a marker in our family and help you understand that you're moving from being an adolescent to being an adult. And having that conversation with them, I think, makes such a difference. So tell us about, then you took Cameron, your oldest, who's now at University of Tennessee, and you took him on this trip. Talk about that. Yeah,
it was just a great trip. He decided he wanted to do hiking and backpacking. And so we did a 7-day backpacking trip through the Pacific Crest Trail in the Sierra Nevadas. And then we also did some hiking in Yosemite. I have a couple pictures here.
Yeah.
That was us. And so we hiked to the top of Half Dome too. That is way up there. That's Cameron holding up El Capitan, or pushing it. And then that's Cameron. And then, so this bear, all right, you can tell he's got a collar on. So we saw him in Yosemite, but I didn't take a picture of the bear we saw on the trail because I didn't want to take the time to get my camera out. So, we did have a real sense of adventure. We saw bears and rattlesnakes and amazing beauty, met amazing people. We ended up meeting these people from Tullahoma right down the road, and, we prayed together but so, the other thing that I did there was I asked people what I call in Cameron's fan club, so me and Charlotte and his grandparents, his youth leaders, and to write a letter or a Bible verse for him. And like Jeff, you gave him a verse. And so at the beginning of that day, we would talk about the letter. I'd give him the letter, and that day on the trail, we'd talk about it and what it means. And so I just wanted to mark that moment and say, Cameron, you are becoming a man. Things are going to change, and you are going to enter the world. There will be challenges, but you've got God, and you've got these people, they believe in you. And so that was really what I wanted to make as an impact for him. And Jeff, I thought I was teaching my son about adventure, but I can tell you that a 16-year-old sense of adventure trumps, at that time I was 49, trumps a 49-year-old's any day of the week. And he taught me a lot about adventure on that trip. And, it wasn't all easy. We had adverse weather, and like everyone's turning around, and I'm going, yeah, Cameron, we should turn around. And he's going, no, Dad, we came this far. And so we had to work through things. We lost our water filter. We had to work through these different challenges and frustrations. And so it wasn't just like this pristine thing, but it was us learning how to work together through things too.
Yeah, that 16-year-old probably ran you to death. Come on, Dad.
I had blisters, and he was just taking off.
But I love how intentional you were. It wasn't just, hey, let's go for a hike. It was, no, let's prepare for this. And then you had something each day that you taught him about being a man, and having other people pour into that, writing letters and verses and spending that time. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that's one thing. I think, we can identify with guys and going, hey, let's do a hike or something like that. But you also have a daughter.
Right.
And recently you did your kind of rite of passage with your daughter. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was just about 3 weeks ago that we went. And so, yeah, it was very different. So Mackenzie, when she was little, so we've been talking about this trip for a long time. So she wanted to go to the Amazon and discover a new insect. And she was way into insects as a kid. Then it turned into scuba diving. Then it turned into a history trip through Europe. And then we finally went to New Orleans with basically 1 day planned of going to the World War II Museum. So I told you my criteria, and that didn't fit very well into the criteria I had established. So it did cause friction between me and Mackenzie as we were, working through this over the years. And, but I got here too late, I think, or later than I should have. But it finally dawned on me, God meets us where we're at. And as a parent, I needed to demonstrate that kind of compassion and love for my daughter, and her, that was not her sense of adventure. That was not anywhere the things I thought were adventurous. It wasn't anywhere within on her radar or things that she would enjoy. And we really got into a part where instead of this being a relationship enhancing experience, it was turning into a relationship dismantling experience. And so I had to meet her where she was at, but it turned out God was in it, and it turned out to be just an amazing trip. And so I got a few pictures of that. So we did this is a crawfish boil if you've never been to one in New Orleans. And then we did the touristy things.
She's got their Pred shirt on, I love that.
we went to the World War II Museum, but I also didn't think I'd have a sense of adventure, but Mackenzie has this passion for providing feminine hygiene supplies to homeless women. And so we took 2 days and we got together supplies and materials, and we went out and handed out supplies to homeless women. And, we met amazing people, and they prayed with us and we prayed with them. And these people just poured into Mackenzie and just really praised her. And it was, God was just totally in that, working in it. And I didn't think we'd have any sense of adventure. I went to that last picture too early, but I don't know if we can bring that back up. But we were passing out some supplies in one neighborhood, and I don't know if they were just extremely religious there, but it was a little bit scary and adventurous. So it was a different sense of adventure. We didn't see bears on the trail, but we were in environments that were definitely adventurous, and so it was just a really strong foundation building experience for us. Again, I had her fan club put together a letter or verses, and we talked about those every day, and we just marked that moment in time and said, Mackenzie, you're becoming a woman. You're going to go into the world. Things are going to change from here, and it's going to be challenging, but you've got God, and you've got these people that believe in you. And so that was that trip, a big learning experience for me. And
wow. So that's totally different experience, but it was tailored for Cameron, and then it was tailored for Mackenzie, and it really met them, and I think that's powerful, Ben, to be able to be flexible enough to say, Mackenzie probably didn't want to go hike in Yosemite or, and you did, you're like, love that, but to be able to meet her, and I think what I appreciate too is a lot of times as dads with girls, we're kind of like, well, we'll let mom handle that, but the more people I talk to and the more women in different places are just like, I wish my dad would have talked to me about this because of the impact that it has. So what advice would you give to men about having a rite of passage or a milestone kind of trip, or putting that into their vocabulary?
Yeah, I'd say first off, it doesn't have to be really expensive or very far away. I think if you are intentionally marking a moment in time and saying you're proud of them and recognizing that they are becoming an adult, that's going to be impactful, whether it's in your backyard or if it's in Hawaii. The other thing is to be flexible. I never saw myself handing out tampons to homeless women on one of these, but that was where God took us and Mackenzie took us, and so be extremely flexible. Involve the fan club, and mark that moment in time, and that they are becoming an adult. They're going into the world. They've got support, and I'd say probably my last thing too is I think half this church was praying for us. So I'd say make sure that you have people praying as well, and I think that's it.
Yeah. Man, I just love the intentionality of that. I really do. And looking at your kids and saying, hey, it's not just I want to get them through middle school and through high school and then good luck. It's like I want to pour into them. I want to prepare them. And I love Mackenzie's heart. I think watching her serve at church, but she has a missions heart. And for you to tailor that experience to meet that, powerful. So what's been the result? What's been the result with your kids? What have you seen?
Yeah, so Cameron's birthday not so long ago, we do this thing at dinner where we say, what's the best and worst of your day, just to get the kids to talk to us. And so at his birthday, Charlotte said, well, what's the best and worst of your life so far? And Cameron said, well, my best is the trip I took with Dad. And, that just means, it meant so much. to hear that. And then he was home from school recently on spring break, and of course we're disconnected. He's in school, I'm here, and so we went out for a long hike, and I got to catch up on where he's at on his faith journey and school and how things are going with his girlfriend. And so I didn't see that at the time, but it's given us a place to reconnect to. And so with Mackenzie, I think in a time where I've been so busy with work over the last few years, and she's been so busy with band, and it just gave us a place. I'd say for her it was even more foundational, that we needed to put some building blocks in the foundation of our relationship. And we have now a potential place to connect on, hygiene products for homeless women. It's pretty easy to do. We can just, go to Nashville and do that. So I think that's been the impact that I've seen so far.
What advice would you give to men just about investing in our kids at any age? Instead of just waiting to 16, you started out even saying that you were a workaholic, and it was work and then God and then family, and then it became, God and then work and then family. But at some point it switched, and you didn't wait till your kids were 16 to switch that. So what advice would you give us, because a lot of us have young kids or even some have grandkids, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think they're looking to us for validation of love. Do I belong? Who am I? Even when they're pushing us away, and it can really not look like they are looking at us for validation, but when they're pushing us away, it's so important, that we lead in that way and that we are there. This is just a job that we cannot afford to not do well. And, I can't profess to have all the answers. My house is like anybody else's. There's doors that slam, and I'm a parent in training. But the other thing I'd say is, don't wait for a big trip. Start when they're young, if you still can. Build those habits, because at some point in time, not every child, but most children, I'd say, at some point in time, you will hit a point where your relationship is strained. And if you build those habits of connection, then that's when you're going to need them. It's not going to be when they're young and you come home and they want to run up and spend time with you and you're too busy. It's later. At some point, I remember seeing Andy Stanley speak about his relationship with his dad and Charles Stanley, and they met for breakfast, every morning. And when Andy left his dad's church and took half the congregation with him, it was a pretty tumultuous time. And he said that they still met every morning. They didn't speak. Once a week for breakfast. They didn't speak to each other, but they still met. And so I just think if we build those habits, make that a habit in our lives,
What's been, you said that Cameron, did a mission trip with Charlotte, and that's something that you want to do their senior year. They want to go somewhere. How was that with Charlotte?
Yeah, it was, they still talk about it all the time, and, and I think at that age group too, it was the kids in the transitional living facility too. Just as much as they served there, I think the impact that those kids had on Cameron, just how mature they were and all that they were doing to serve God, and they really were just a little bit older than him, and then Charlotte and Cameron's relationship just, really blossomed in that too.
Yeah. I think I loved how you made the analogy early on about work and, how we'll have goals at work and we'll be so driven and you've been very successful and have done that really well. But to transfer that over to your family and to look and say, well, what are my goals for my family? Where are the things in the or the measurables and the ROI, all that stuff that we do at work all day. And it's kind of like we come home and we're like, well, they'll figure it out, And you've taken that and just transferred it over so that you are raising incredible kids. I mean, and they're adults that are leading. And I love that mindset change, So tell me, what's the best advice you've ever been given?
Yeah, Jeff, if I could just say one more thing on what you just said, along that line is we have performance plans and performance development plans that we do for our employees, and we put a lot of time like, oh yeah, this person's a high potential and they're going to make it here, but then we come home and we're like, oh man, I just need to watch Netflix for a while because I'm dead.
Yeah, I'm spent.
And so it's not like we need to manage our families like work, but investing that time and connecting at them with a different level. But so best advice, a while back I was going through, I was really struggling with something, and actually Joel Barone told me that something that someone had said to him, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, but it was someone had said to him, don't wish your trials away. Because that's where God's really working hard in you. And I think that applies, in families, we're going to have trials. And in work, in our career, we're going to have trials. And I'm one of those people, I'm like, man, if I could just get through this, if I get through to Friday, it's going to be great. I want to be on the other side of the pain. And but to take a moment and step back and say, what is God teaching me here? What am I learning right now? And so just to not wish those trials away, that there's a lot of richness in there too.
I love that, because I do think you're right. We want to fast forward. And yet, a lot of times that's where God's teaching us the most, and that's where we're growing the most. And I appreciate you being honest with us too, when you said that, you and Cam, and you and Cameron were, right on. Mackenzie was a little harder.
Yeah.
And there was some bumps in the road relationally. And sometimes we have that with different kids in our own family, but to persevere through that and to say, okay, God's growing us deeper in that relationship is important, and not just going, okay, well, I'm going to fast forward for her to get out of middle school or get out of high school, and then everything will be fine. Man, it goes quick. Doesn't it go quick?
It goes quick.
So yeah. All right, give us a couple of takeaways for being spiritual leaders. What would you say to us about being spiritual leaders?
Yeah, I think first off, it's it's our privilege and it's our obligation. And then second, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? I mean, your kids are going to be led by somebody.
Wow.
And you can choose to be that person, or you can choose to allow them to pick somebody else. And so I think that's it.
Man, drop the mic on that one. Your kids are going to be led by somebody, and you get to pick, right? Is it going to be you or somebody else? Dude, that's strong. That's really good. All right, Ben, what do you want your legacy to be?
For today, if everyone who hears this and has an ability to create a milestone moment for their children, does that, I think it can change our culture. I think it's something that's missing in our youth today, and I would love that to be my legacy.
I love that, man. That would be powerful. Just that involvement, and that what it would create in families, what it would create in generations. So that's fantastic. All right, we got some questions for you. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. Thomas?
Check. Ben, question number 1 came in here, and it says, what are regular spiritual practices or disciplines that you do to prepare yourself for parenting your children?
Wow. I think there's a few things. One is just your quiet time with God. It's something that tends to come in and out of our lives, but the more we are connected to God, the better. And then I'd say, with your spouse too. My dad said this really corny thing. I almost said it for my advice, but it's on my first date he had with my mom was, he said, the closer we get to God, the closer we're going to get to each other. And we always said that is the worst pickup line I've ever heard. But it's really true. And so if you're connected to God, connected to your wife. And then, the other thing is our older A6 group is still, we meet once a week and we just kind of share life together. And, we support each other and we talk a lot about what's going on with family and things like that. So just to have that group around you that's walking with you. So I'd say, your connection to God, very connected to your wife, and then a group of guys too around you. And that's,
man, I think you nailed it. I mean, your connection to the Lord is most important, right? Because you teach out of an overflow of what God's doing in your own heart and life. And your kids, of all people, watch you. They know whether you're legit or whether you're not. And so I think you staying on task with the Lord doesn't mean you're perfect, right? But it means that you're growing in the Lord. And then I love that about your spouse. And I do think, it is like a triangle, right? As you grow closer to God and your spouse is growing closer to God, you are growing closer to each other. So, but I think your marriage, I think you're teaching your kids what marriage is going to be like and how they treat their future spouse one day.
Absolutely.
And then that group of guys around you. And we've heard that at men's leadership a few times, which is so important. And I think Amy Alexander's even said it last time, 4 to 7 men around you, be sure that you've got some guys who can speak truth into your life. And I think that comes at church. And I think that finding those godly men, you've done a great job, Ben, of plugging in and leading. I mean, you teach students, on Sunday mornings and you pour in. So you're around your kids' friends, and that's awesome. I think if you're a dad, be around your kids' friends and teach and lead. But then also watching your kids serve. You've done a great job of helping your kids serve. I mean, they do worship one, serve one on Sunday mornings, and they develop this mindset of service. And
absolutely,
that's great.
Yeah, I think that makes such a big difference. My kids, I think they kind of own the church because they've served in it.
Yeah,
they've cleaned it up. They help set up. They do that kind of stuff. So
it pays huge dividends, though. I mean, it just makes such an impact and a difference. That's great. Thomas?
Okay, Ben, how has your relationship with your children changed as they've gotten older, and how do you maintain an involvement in their lives?
Yeah, I'd say, again, it's, I'm a parent in training. When they're younger, it is so much easier. At least it was for me. It was so much easier because they kind of have to do what you say, and they seem to be a lot more interested. As they got older and it got more difficult, well, one, if they're in sports or band or whatever, taking the time to drive them and their friends, you learn so much just by being in that car. And it may not sound like a lot, but if you leave that all to your spouse and you're not participating in that, you're missing out on a lot of life and a lot of where they're really at. And then, one thing, Charlotte's dad did this with her, and as Mackenzie got really, really busy, we started just going to breakfast every Sunday morning before things got going here, except she kept serving earlier and earlier, and lately I have to get up at 5 a.m. on Sunday to spend time with her, so it's kind of not really looking forward to that, but if nothing else is working, man, you got to protect that, and the earlier you can start a steady habit, the more, when it gets heated up, busy, that's just going to seem natural to them. And I've had a harder time trying to break back in when I didn't have that habit, or I had a year of craziness and I didn't do anything with them. And then I'm trying to break back in, and it's so hard to break back in. So if you could just develop that habit and never break it, you're awesome, and did way better than I have.
Yeah, I love that answer, because I do think when they're young, you're kind of like, oh, I'm so tired. But they're captive audience, right? It's not like they can go anywhere. And then as they get older, you think, hey, we can relate more, but then they've got sports and travel, and I mean, you're going, wow, we never see each other. And capturing those moments of, in the car and not turning on, music or giving them their phones, or, just like, hey, let's talk, or capturing those moments at dinner and just saying, this is gonna be, or breakfast, this is something we're gonna do. I think if you're not intentional about it, I'm telling you, sports will take over, school will take over, drama takes over, and you don't see your kids. And making that intentional is so powerful. That's a good word.
And sometimes you just have to, we call it forced family fun, and you just have to make them come with you.
Yeah. You're still the parent, right? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you're miserable, we'll just get over it.
Yeah. I remember my dad saying that one time. He's like, I said, I didn't want to do something. He goes, well, do you want to live here? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. It's like, okay. So yeah, you gotta, this is something where you're stepping as a parent. And a lot of times you got to remember that parent, you still have the number one influence in your kid's life,
Absolutely.
And we think it's their kids when they get to middle school or high school. I mean, it's their friends, but it's really you. And to be honest about that, and be the parent. Be the parent,
And I think even when they're not acting like it, you have to be, one of my big learnings is that you don't feel connected, and they're not coming to you, but they are hearing what you're saying. They are watching your behavior, and you are still, what you do is still so important in their lives, whether they're acting like that or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me just add one thing, and then we'll get one more question. But you know what? Fight the battles. Yeah. I think sometimes as men, like you said, sometimes we're tired. We come home, we've had a long day at work, and we want to just watch Netflix, or we want to watch the Preds, or whatever's on. And we go, and your wife may say, well, they're doing this or they're doing that. Step into that, and I think as guys, we've got to step in. We've got to initiate. And if our kids, we see them going off in a different direction, or hey, they're having trouble at school, or they're not doing, get counseling, get help, do whatever at that age. Because if you don't fight that battle then, and you don't step in with it then, man, they just go
Absolutely.
off. And I'm like, man, you had your chance, do it, And for men, we've got to be the champions. We've got to step in there.
Yeah.
So,
and it's going to be harder than because I said so, right? It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be battle after battle after battle.
Yeah, but you do it in love, and you do it in grace, but you initiate, you step in. Man, that's such a good word, Ben. Yeah. So, all right, one more question.
Okay, Ben, what if you feel like you've waited too long to start being intentional with your kids? What would you suggest, or where would you suggest starting?
Ooh.
That's a really great question. I would say, start with small stuff. I mean, it doesn't, and don't try to make up for everything overnight, and, but don't give up, it's something as simple as breakfast, or like I said, driving them in the car. I can't tell you how much stuff I learned by driving my son to lacrosse practice with his friends in the car. I mean, and, but be there, and be there regularly, and just make a commitment to that, and the rest will take care of itself. I mean, it's really just being there, and then the other thing is just let them know. Try to see them as God sees them, and see them as God's children, and when they see you looking at them, make sure they see you looking at them that way. And so it's those subtle things. It's the smaller things, and it doesn't have to be a big, giant thing, but do it, and do it regularly.
Yeah, it's never too late. I mean, it's really never too late to step back in, and if we could communicate anything, just do something, step in, and then develop out that plan for how you're going to help your kids grow and mature. And but yeah, it's never too late. Ben, I just want to say thank you, because I've been able to watch your journey, and you're a great dad, and to see your kids walking with the Lord and watch them serve. And I just want to say thank you to you and Charlotte, and the difference you make in church, but the difference you make in their lives. And I know you've got a big job and lots of things, but you could tell your heart is set on the Lord first, and then your family, and then your career. And to see that play out, praise God. So let me pray for us. Oh, Father, thanks for today. And thank you, Father, just for the challenge, God, to me and to all of us, Father, to be the men and the fathers you've called us to be. And God, I thank you that you're with us, that you're for us. God, it's not easy all the time, but God, you have called us and equipped us for such a time as this. And so I pray that we would be men after your heart, that we would be godly husbands, that we would be godly fathers, that we would put you first, and then we would put our family and our kids, that we would make the most of this moment, this time that we have, Father, to really pour in and to impact their lives, God. And Father, thank you. Thank you for entrusting these precious children to us, and find us faithful. And so, Lord, thanks for Ben. Thanks for our time this morning. And God, we dedicate our lives to you. And it's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, brother.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ben. Thanks for joining us. That was great. Hey, guys, as we wrap up today, I want to remind you, you're going to receive an MLN Rewind email sometime later today. It'll have a link to today's interview, as well as a link to the website. Another reminder, we've got over 50 interviews just like this that we've done over the last couple of years that you can access through the website, mensleadershipnetwork.com. And it's a real easy link to share with peers or other men in your office or other men in your life. Hey, as we wrap up today, I want to let everybody know this is our last MLN for this semester. We're going to probably take the summer off, but be on the lookout for some additional emails. This fall, we're going to change the format up a little bit as we attempt to use MLN to elevate the overall men's ministry of the church and give men even more ways to connect and build those 4 to 6 men peer group type of opportunities around you. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you next time.